So what is this camera? This is the Canon Vixia HF G50. This camera is pretty much ready to go with almost no setup, but then at the same time you can change some settings and customize it quite a bit to fit your project. It shoots in high resolution, so either 4K UHD at 30 frames per second or 1080p HD with 4K oversampling. For most projects that we'll be dealing with this camera in the RMC, it's probably going to be shooting in 1080. It has a large format sensor, 3-inch view screen, and a tilting viewfinder. It has a touchscreen autofocus with face detection, 20x optical zoom, which, as you can see on the top, has a rocking seesaw zoom control lever. Image stabilization. It has 2 SD card slots, which allows you to do relay and simultaneous recording. Manual focus ring when needed. Often it's in autofocus, but you can put it in manual and use the focus ring. It has slow motion and time-lapse modes. It has an optional lens hood that you can put on there, some audio inputs and headphone jacks, and a built-in microphone. And it shoots primarily in an MP4 file format, which H.264 has its codec, which is a pretty ubiquitous, easily opened file type in almost any software. As you can see, the kit includes the camera itself, battery, the lens hood, a power cable, as well as an SD card. Make sure you check the SD card slot to see if it's there. To install the battery, insert the battery on the back of the camera with the arrow pointing up. You'll see the connectors in the battery and the camera will be in contact. Slide into place until you hear it click, and when you're ready to remove the battery, pull the battery release tab and slide downward to remove. Make sure you save time to charge your batteries, as we don't charge them in advance. To charge the batteries, connect the power cable to the camera and to a power outlet with the battery attached. You'll see an indicator light once connected. If you don't have sufficient time to pre-charge or you run low on battery power, you can also run the camera while connected to an outlet and charging. To insert the SD card, slide the door open and insert. You can see a diagram to show you which way to insert it. Don't force it. It should go in easily and comfortably lock in place, and then close the SD card door. To remove, press in on the SD card and it will unlock, then gently pull out and close the door. On the view screen, you can check both the remaining battery life and the remaining card space, expressed as time left. So you can see the camera is telling me I have this many minutes left of recording space before running out of space on my SD card, as well as this many minutes left of battery life. If you notice you don't have enough space for your project, clear your card to make room for recording. To see this information, you'll need to open your view screen. That's where you can set up your shot and monitor your recording. And this is also where most of your settings will be. Notice that you can swivel it for the best angle in your situation, including turning it completely around if you're recording yourself. Just make sure that you close the view screen prior to returning the camera to the bag. There are many ways of holding or stabilizing the camera, but I'll cover the two most common. If you use it handheld, put your hand through the grip like this. Notice that the strap is adjustable. You can then either fold out the view screen or look through the viewfinder as you record. Your thumb is right at the record button and you can zoom in and out easily with the seesaw zoom lever. To get a more polished look, attach the Vixia to a tripod. There's a threaded tripod mount on the bottom of the camera to attach to a tripod, a faceplate, or a stabilizer, etc. Insert the mounting screw and tighten. Tripods are available in checkout. To turn on the camera, use the camera mode on the slider on the top left, from off to camera. If you slide to the media mode, it's used to watch clips that you've already recorded. And you can even delete bad takes. If you don't see anything on the view screen, your lens cap is probably closed. Just make sure to open it. Then close the cap when not in use, and especially before placing the camera back in the bag. This will protect the lens from getting scratched or damaged. If you don't have the lens hood on, you'll see that the lens has a cap on it. Just make sure that you pull that off before recording and then store it in a safe place. Put the cap back on before storing the camera. Okay, let's take a look at the screen itself. First, to toggle through what is shown on the screen, press the display button, DSP, next to the SD cards. This will show different information, and I suggest keeping all of it up. You can see the battery life remaining in the top right. Below that, you'll see the remaining SD card space. And below that, you'll see the frame rate and recording size information, including your resolution. On the bottom right, you'll see the audio input volume. On the top left, you'll see the mode, which right now is auto. To turn on the menu, press the menu button. And then you can move around and select things using this little toggle right above it. Press up, down, left, or right. And then press in the set button to select. Since someone else used the camera prior to you checking it out, it's best to clear the memory. You can do this in the menu. You don't want to run out of space in the middle of recording, and you don't want to transfer more files to your computer than you actually recorded. So go to the menu, under Recording Setup, which is a little gear symbol. On the second page, you'll see Initialize SD. Then choose which SD card slot, A or B. It'll show you some data on the card, including how much space is used. To complete the action, select Initialize. However, warning, this will delete everything on the card. Make sure you've transferred any important media prior to completing this action. Next, you'll want to set your resolution and frame rate. There are many options on this camera, as you can see on this chart. When you're recording, you can choose UHD, HD, or 720, which I don't recommend. For most courses, it will be 1920 by 1080, or called 1080p. And then you get to choose your frame rate. You can choose from 24, 30, or up to 60 frames per second. For most projects, 30 is perfectly acceptable unless you want a film look, and then you could choose 24. Just make sure in your editing software you also select 24. To set these settings, you can go into your menu under Recording Setup, which again is the little gear symbol. In the first page, you can see the resolution size right here. If you select it, you can choose which size you'd like. If you have no idea, I recommend starting with the 1920 by 1080, either the 17 or 35 megabytes per second, depending on how large are the files you'd like. So if you don't know, choose the 35 megabytes per second. If you're going to shoot in 4K or UHD, you can choose the 3840 by 2160. And if you'd like something really small, you're recording a really long event or something like that, you can choose the 1280 by 720 resolution. If I go back, there you can choose the frame rate right below it. These settings will change your options depending on which resolution size you chose. So here in 1080p, I have 3 options, 24, 30, or 60 frames per second. Frame rate is how many frames per second, literally. So if you have more, your motion will look crisper, like maybe sports or something. If you go too far, it can look kind of like a soap opera, for instance, if you do 60 frames per second. For certain situations, that is totally going to be fine. Less is going to have more motion blur and look a little bit more cinematic. So that would be something like 24 frames per second. I recommend most projects, if you're unsure which to choose, just choose 30 frames per second. Below that, you can see the recording media, and this is where you can choose which memory card you're going to record to for both movies and also for photos. So select which card you'd like to record. And below that, you can see dual or relay recording. Standard just means that you record in one card. Dual recording means you're recording the exact same thing to both cards to have a safety, or if you're in a workflow where you need to hand off one of the SD cards to somebody else and keep one. And then relay recording means that it records all the way on one until it's full and then immediately goes on to the next one, which can be helpful if you're recording something really long and you don't want to stop in between. Below that, you can see fast and slow motion. If you select that, you can turn one of those settings on if you'd like fast or slow motion. This camera has an internal microphone that you can use if you'd like a scratch track or something that is adequate. If you'd like better audio recording, this camera also features an audio in port where you can connect an external microphone. There'll be more on this a little later when we talk about microphones. The camera defaults to automatic volume adjustment. You can change the recording volume manually by pressing the function button and switching the audio to manual. Then you can adjust the volume with the arrows. There are also some auto settings for particular recording situations such as music, speech, etc. You can adjust the headphone volume on the second page of the audio settings, but this won't change the volume of the recording. It'll only change the volume of the headphones, so how loud you hear it in the headphones. It won't change anything about the recording, so make sure you change the recording volume if you want to increase or decrease the volume. This camera does feature a zoom lens, so you can change the focal length of the lens, or as we call it, zooming in and zooming out. Multiple ways you can do this, but by default it's set up with this seesaw lever, so you go towards T or W to go zoom in or out using the lens optically rather than digitally. When on auto, you can simply tap the screen to focus. It also has face detection and object detection. So it will attempt to keep objects or people in focus as they move. On top of the camera, next to the zoom rocker, you'll see a slider with auto and M. This is your full auto or manual shooting mode selector. On auto, most controls are determined by the camera, which is perfect for beginners and many users who will leave this on auto. If you'd like more control over how the camera finds exposure or focus, you'll need to slide this to M. Once on M, you'll see the mode is selectable on the top left of the screen. Select it, and there you'll find many modes that are recognizable for DSLR users or more advanced users of other cameras. When on M, and in some semi or fully manual shooting modes, you can select the AF/MF button on the screen to switch to manual focus. Then adjust focus with the focus ring. Make sure that the zoom focus slider on the back is set to focus. To set manual exposure, move the auto slider to M. Then choose a manual shooting mode. From there, select function on the screen. There you'll find available settings for your shooting mode. In full manual, for instance, I can change the aperture, shutter, and adjust gain. And when you're all set up and ready to record, press the record button to begin recording, and then press it again to stop recording. The Canon Vixia HF G50 has two options for transferring footage. First, you can remove the SD card and insert it into an SD card reader. The second option is through the USB out, and you can see the port right here. We recommend transferring your files directly from the SD card. There are SD card readers available for checkout in the RMC, and all the iMacs in the RMC have SD card slots on the back. The SD card will show up on your device like a flash drive or an external hard drive, and then you can copy all those files to someplace safe. A word of warning, avoid changing the file structure of the SD card. If you do, you may need to format the card before the Canon Vixia can read it again, and thus deleting all your previous files. So don't change anything about the file structure. This camera can transfer files from the USB port. Regardless of your file type, you should always keep a backup of the unprocessed video files somewhere safe along with the originals. So let's talk about the video files that you'll get. Canon records its video files in MPEG-4 H.264. These files should be easy to open in any video editor, including iMovie. If you're a beginner, you can even directly upload them to a hosting site like YouTube. And YouTube has its own simple video editor built in, if that's what you prefer. If you're recording in UHD, these files are very large and may make the editing software too slow to function properly depending on your device. And depending on your resolution, computer speed, etc., you may need to process your files before editing. Or if you're moving the video files directly into a nonlinear editor, such as Adobe Premiere or DaVinci Resolve, you may need to create proxy files, which are temporary video files in a low resolution that are replaced by full resolution files when exporting.
Always leave time to charge the battery in case it's not charged. Always make sure the camera is securely attached to the tripod, or it could fall. Cameras can make a setup top-heavy and prone to fall over. Be sure to properly set up the tripod. Always keep front caps on the lenses when not in use. Always return this equipment as a complete kit, all at once. Never place the camera or lenses on a dusty, sandy, wet, or otherwise unclean surface. The dirt or water can get into the delicate controls and completely disable them, or make them sticky or not smoothly adjust. Never clean the camera with anything other than a dry, soft cloth. Never leave this equipment in a hot car or near a heater. In fact, don't leave this equipment in your car at all. Like all batteries, do not expose to excessive heat, such as the inside of a car under direct sunlight, near a fire, etc., or they could ignite or explode. This could also happen if exposed to excessive pressure or weight, or if punctured. Never leave the equipment unattended in public or in a shared space. You will be responsible for anything lost or stolen.
Thanks for watching.